So my name is Ricky Bonema. I'm the horticulture manager here at the garden.
And I'm Megan Steen, and I'm a gardener.
Perfect. Could you describe in as much detail as possible what sparked your passion into botany?
So my background is ecology mostly, with a lot of botany in it, obviously. I grew up being very outdoorsy, very athletic, mostly like in the ocean or in the dirt, and so I just always really liked to learn things, and becoming an ecologist gave me a very like holistic view of how everything is kind of connected. So even here, I feel like the plant, it doesn't end at the plants, and it doesn't start with the plants. You've got the soil, you've got the plants, you've got all of the organisms that come here, migrate through here, and I've just always had like a curiosity and a fascination with that, and just like a longing to kind of understand the connections more and more. And I'm, as a Florida native, just always really like to learn about where I'm from, so I kind of focus in on like native flora and native organisms and learning in that sense. But
And you?
I mean, for me, it's probably like radically different because I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, and I grew up in kind of a pretty normal suburb and really didn't pay much heed to nature or what was going on around me. And so I don't think it was until I really got to college and I was literally like in a biology class, and our professor was like, okay, go collect a ginkgo leaf. And I was like, oh, there's different leaves, like there's what? Like literally I just wasn't paying attention to that. But what got me into it was that I ended up going to school for landscape architecture for design. It's the design piece for me. So I have a background in landscape architecture, and just the idea of how we make spaces and how they have to function on multiple levels, because there's already things that have existed in that space and that are processes that are actively happening in that space, you know, culturally, environmentally, etc. But, you know, how do we work with what's there, and how do we make it better? Should we even be changing things?
Yeah.
So for me, I appreciate nature because it's a tool for design, but also have grown to appreciate nature much more. I think it was something I was largely oblivious to for a long time. And just, you know, kind of growing up in a nondescript suburb where everything was the same, you know, like every tree was a maple, and
the landscape was the same on it.
Yeah,
well,
right?
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, how do you think growing up in a suburb like affected your view of like ecology and the environment, like when you aren't exposed to such, like, I mean, here in Florida, like we have, or especially Miami, like we have the beach there, we have a million state parks to go to at all. I know a bunch of my friends from school that grew up in suburban areas like have never even seen the ocean before coming to Miami. So do you think that plays an effect on like the way that somebody perceives the environment growing up in a place?
And their detachment from it. Absolutely. Yes. Because that's what I'm trying to say is I was very detached from it, and it actually took me like actively like being forced to see, right? Yeah. Because and it's very weird to describe, but like you know, it's everything, it's all around you, and yet. But yeah, I think there's kind of a banality to the
for sure. And I feel like the more you know, like for me, I'm taking biology too right now in my school at UM, and the things that I've seen in that class have like drastically changed my perspective on not just the environment as a whole, but different ecosystems and the way that it's more of like an interchange or like a dance between like a lot of different like organisms like at play in an environment. And my dad, he's in the medical field, and he had to take a lot of biology classes, and I remember him telling me like, in bio too, like you learn everything from like a nematode to like a fungus, an elephant, like everything. I was like, there's no way that you cover like every single range of species, but it's 100% true. Like it's literally things that I didn't even know existed or even like paid attention to. Like it blew my mind completely being in that class, and you learn so much. And I feel like not only do you learn, but I feel like you gain a deeper appreciation for the things around you. And I feel like that plays a big role into like becoming a more aware person and a more like educated individual. And obviously, like, the more you're educated, the more you can form opinions about, like, you know, different topics and the ways that in which we should address those topics, especially in an environment or in a day and age where like conservation is kind of thrown to the wayside in a lot of, like, you know, in a like micro scale, like a place like this, but even in a macro scale with like the amount of pollution and emissions that are going on, like, and it's not stopping, and it's at an exponential rate. Like, it's hard. The next question. Okay. Do you believe in climate change, and what role do you think the media plays in addressing this issue? I'll start with Ricky.
Yeah, I believe in climate change, definitely. I mean, the only constant is change, so even if I didn't believe that humans were having an impact on climate, I would still believe in climate change, because that's just, like, on a large scale, it's always been changing since the beginning of time. But I do definitely believe in the data that show how the use of burning fossil fuels has increased different greenhouse gases, which have been shown to increase the heating capacity, or like the heat holding capacity in our atmosphere. I definitely believe in it. I think media has a very strong role, and I feel like that role has even changed in, like, people, like, for me and for people that I know that use social media, is I feel like at this point in time I have to go and find, like, if I read on Instagram that, oh, scientists are saying this, like, I will immediately go and try to find it in the primary literature. But my background is, I came from the research world, where like that's my instant go-to. And so I've always come from, like, don't just take information as you, and even when you read the primary literature, is to, like, criticize the methods and everything. So I'm personally that person.
No, I mean, as you should be.
But you can't expect all of my friends, like, I can't expect my friends to do that, or people to, like, have time, or even the
inclination to go
wanting
and, like,
to do that. But I have, like, I think people, there's two different types of people. There's people who take in everything that they read as, like, yes, I read this on Instagram, did you know this? Or there's people that take everything with a grain of salt, and so they just don't believe anything, or their political view forms their opinion on these topics instead of, and I think politics have more and more gotten into
polarizing the issue.
Polarizing the entire issue, and there's stakeholders on all sorts of different sides, and greenwashing is now a thing, and it's just, greenwashing is when a company is advertising or saying that they're doing something environmentally safe, or like that their product is a green product, that it's good for the environment, that it's organic, or it's all natural. But to call something natural, it looks good to the consumer, and they think, like, oh, this is a natural product, so this is a good product. Meanwhile, like, there's a lot of poisons and toxins that are natural. So anyone can put natural on their product, but when a consumer sees it, they see natural and they think it's an environmentally friendly thing, but that's not necessarily true based on how they're using it. So greenwashing is when a company will use like terms like organic, natural, things like that to make a product seem environmentally friendly, and it's not necessarily the full truth. There's specific certifications that if you, like, you have to be certified to use a certain, like, logo on a product, and if you see that, you know that it's certified in different ways. But products can just say they're organic.
For sure, even non-FDA approved products, like, you still have, like, an organic label on it.
But you see, like, so I think there's a lot of mistrust on the other side of, like, people either just take everything in and believe it, or there's people that just, like, they're like, oh, I don't believe anything anymore, and I just, like,
I feel like that's a fair conclusion
don't know what's
to
happening
have.
with this world.
Oh, no, for sure. I feel like I just wrote a paper about this for my English class, where it was like this might be off topic, but it's like in the early 1990s, coming into like, I want to say for like a good 20 years, the internet kind of had like a niche, like underground, but like still kind of like an invisible hand in the media a little bit. So like, I'm trying to like think about it before I say it. I guess like in recent times, there's just been such an influx of like politicized information and misinformation like spewed. It almost seems deliberately, where instead of like being in the age of information where, like you said, like you can go to Google Scholar and like look up a scholarly source about anything, instead of just like taking, you know, whatever you see, like a headline grabbing, clickbaiting like article on Twitter or on Instagram, like as doctrine.
That says scientists say this.
Yeah. And I feel like now it's just been like the introduction of the age of disinformation as opposed to the age of information, which is ironic because it's because of the amount of access that we have to these resources and like articles.
It's not the Renaissance we were promised.
No, it's really not. Yeah, it's really not. And it's